right, so without further ado, let's get started and talk about how we can rejuvenate our health, our life, our cells, and ignite our life. We're looking for understanding where energy comes from in the body and how we can get more of it, as well as what factors drive the aging process and how we can do that as well as possible. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the mitochondria. What the heck are those, how they're involved in aging, immune health, energy levels, and more. We're going to talk about foundations for mitochondrial health, as well as things that tend to sabotage mitochondrial health. Specifically, we'll be focusing in on nutrients, natural health products, as well as other lifestyle factors for mitochondrial health and cellular longevity, as well as energy. So I've got a poll question running to see what drew you out to the webinar tonight. Feel free to weigh in. Was it concerns around energy, wanting more energy, healthy aging, or both, or something else entirely? And if it is something else, then feel free to type that into the chat as we go along. So it looks like most people, not surprisingly, are interested in both healthy aging and energy. And feel free to weigh in as to what drew you out and what you're interested in learning about. All right, so without, before we get into the main area of the presentation, I want to familiarize everyone with mitochondria, whether or not you have heard that term before. Let's meet our mitochondria. These are pretty amazing things. Mitochondria, so here's a schematic, a fairly complex schematic of a cell. And there's lots going on in the cell here, but specifically the mitochondria are these little, almost like bean-shaped organelles with squiggly lines inside of them. And these are energy-producing centers. So you can think of them as batteries, engines, powerhouses. I'll use different analogies as we go along tonight. But basically, every cell in our body needs energy. And we need, you could say batteries to make those energies. So almost every cell in the body has mitochondria. Red blood cells don't have them, but every other cell does have them. And we see when we look at these schematics of like 2 or 3 mitochondria in a cell, that's just for simplicity's sake. In fact, the average cell has about 2,500 mitochondria. That's why they don't usually draw them all out. A very metabolically active cell. So think about a heart muscle cell that's constantly beating, or a brain cell that's always thinking. Those kinds of very active cells can have 100,000 mitochondria in a single cell. So that just gives you an idea. In fact, in our bodies, we have approximately 10 quadrillion mitochondria. So this is maybe starting to give you a hint as to how important these are. Some very interesting things about mitochondria, they have their own DNA. So when we have DNA, as you know, we inherit our what's called nuclear DNA, the DNA that's in the main part of the cell from both mom and dad. But mitochondrial DNA, we inherit exclusively from our moms. And that's really interesting. Also, when we're talking about mitochondria, we're talking about these energy-producing centers. Energy, or ATP, cellular energy, is made from electrons bouncing around. The squiggly lines you see inside of these mitochondria are something called the electron transport chain. Electrons are bumped down this chain. Think about like water going down a waterfall that's turning a turbine that's making electricity. That's a great analogy to think of this. And when you've got electrons bouncing around, then you are always going to be generating free radicals. So this is the double-edged sword of energy production. That because of the free radicals bouncing around, mitochondria and their DNA tend to get damaged faster than the rest of the cellular DNA. And this can affect, if we don't have ways to protect ourselves from the free radicals formed here, this can become problematic. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So as I mentioned, here's some interesting facts. 10 quadrillion mitochondria in an average adult human. Active cells can have 100,000 or more mitochondria. Again, because of these electrons bouncing around that can cause damage, essentially like a rusting process, The lifespan of a mitochondria averages around 100 days, and then it needs to be replaced. Mitochondria, as I mentioned, the DNA mute up to 10 times faster, and mitochondria use over 90% of the oxygen we breathe. This is going to become really important. I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but basically every breath you take, 90% of it is delivered to the mitochondria. They need that oxygen to create energy. The reason why we can't last very long without oxygen is because the mitochondria begin to starve of oxygen. The mitochondria essentially suffocate, and when that happens, that's what causes major problems in the body. Okay, so understanding then how many mitochondria there are, exactly what they're doing for us, it begins to be clear that if the mitochondria aren't working as well as they should be, that this can affect many aspects of our health. Our energy levels, yes, of course, but experts have said mitochondrial dysfunction, which is characterized, by the way, by a loss of efficiency in the electron transport chain, or basically the production of energy, is characteristic of the aging process, and it can underlie all chronic diseases. And so this is important, and it's something that is worth maintaining. By the way, when we talk about, here's another analogy, when we talk about changes in mitochondrial efficiency, think of an engine. With an engine, when it's really, an engine that's working well, high performance engine, you're getting a lot of power with very little exhaust. But as the engine ages, you can be starting to get less power and more exhaust. So same thing, when our mitochondria aren't working as efficiently or as effectively, we're getting less energy and more free radicals. So think about it that way. Okay, so what can we do to improve our mitochondrial function? Well, the first one, as I mentioned, we inherit our mitochondrial DNA exclusively from our mothers. So picking a good mom will help you out a lot. Just in case it's too late for you to have any influence on that, fortunately, everything else we're going to talk about tonight are things that we can do something about. Decreasing exposure to toxins, modulating inflammation, balancing nutrient intake and absorption, optimizing sleep, protecting from oxidative damage, so protecting from free radical damage, exercise, building muscle mass, a healthy GI function, and essentially repairing mitochondrial function that might have gone awry. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about, some more than others. Okay, so let's move into if due to age or stress, our mitochondria aren't working as efficiently as they should be. In other words, they're starting to produce less power and more exhaust. What can we do about it? So we're going to talk about basically 3-step step we can take, and a bonus step that's important. First, targeted mitonutrition. So above and beyond a healthy diet, which specific nutrients will help the mitochondria work more efficiently and effectively? Secondly, something called NAD support. Now, this bridges the gap between both mitochondrial function in terms of energy production as well as healthy aging. This is very interesting and cutting-edge information about the aging process. Third is anti-inflammatory support. I'll touch on that. And the bonus step is how to get a better night's sleep. And we will be talking about specific products as we go through the presentation. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about targeted mitochondrial nutrition. So above and beyond a healthy diet, which specific nutrients will help the mitochondria do their job? I like this colorful slide because when you see, first of all, color in foods, when we talk about eating colorful fruits and vegetables, for example, and eat the rainbow and these kinds of things, color and different colors signifies polyphenols in food. Polyphenols are typically antioxidants. So these are plant-based compounds, phytonutrients, often acting as antioxidants. And when it comes to mitochondrial health, the more antioxidants, the better to protect us against free radicals being generated. So I really do like this colorful image. I mentioned before that about the importance of oxygen, that 90% of the oxygen that we breathe in is going directly to the mitochondria. But I also mentioned that there's a double-edged sword action here. We know that when there is oxygen, there can be oxidation or rusting. And again, this speaks to this free radical effect. So oxidation, we're all familiar with this in the browning of an apple. So on the left-hand side, you've cut the apple open, and this is the apple browning as it oxidizes. As free radicals are generated, it's essentially a type of rusting. But you can protect against this with antioxidants. So an example that we may use in cooking is if you rub that side or squeeze some lemon juice on one side of the apple, that side of the apple will resist the oxidating process for much longer. And so this is sort of a great a visual to keep in mind for what the goal is in having a lot of antioxidants in the diet to protect against free radicals no matter where they're coming from. But again, keep in mind that free radicals, a lot of them are generated as part of the normal process of energy production, and more of them are being generated as our mitochondria become less efficient with age. So again, so these antioxidants become more important with age. So examples of antioxidants include things like glutathione. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Major antioxidant that's made in the body, but we can also encourage the body to make more of it. Superoxide dismutase as well can be made in the body and can come in food. That's SOD that you see here on the slide. So there are certain nutrients that the mitochondria will use to produce more energy with less free radicals. And so, for example, the Rejuvenate formula here is something that has been shown to increase mitochondrial energy. And it includes a targeted combination of nutrients, coenzyme Q10, acetyl L-carnitine, something called Elevate-TP, as well as glutathione. I already mentioned superoxide dismutase. I'll say a few words about these different nutrients. But this is a formula that can be used by anybody who is looking to increase energy without stimulants. We're not talking about caffeine, for example, which is really an artificial form of energy. I don't know if you know how caffeine works, but caffeine doesn't actually give you energy, but it blocks the receptors in the brain that perceive tiredness. And so it's sort of tricking your brain into thinking that you're not tired when you really are. So that's why you feel like you're not tired, or you feel like you've got more energy. So this is not what we're talking about here. So these nutrients help to increase mitochondrial energy, reduce symptoms of fatigue, help improve strength and power, help to maintain cognitive health and brain function. The coenzyme Q10, this is a nutrient that is sometimes, let's see if I've got that in here. Oh, here's a look at, so this formula comes in both a powdered and a capsule form. The powdered form is vegan, the capsule form is vegetarian, and again, can be taken typically 1 scoop per day, usually in the morning, and on a daily basis, people will typically notice improvements in their energy after a week or two of consistently taking it. That sustained energy. Some people take it before a workout. That's a nice time to have this as well. So let me mention here off the top, acetyl L-carnitine. This is an amino acid that is sometimes called the fat bus. Acetyl L-carnitine will take fatty acids and drive them into the mitochondria so they can be burned for energy. So this is how it increases energy production. There's some fascinating research around acetyl L-carnitine. One of my all-time favorite studies that I've come across is a study out of Italy using or incorporating trial participants only 100 years of age and older, so just centenarians in this study. And looking at, they had 2 groups of people. Both of them were walking on a daily basis, but one group was taking L-carnitine and the other group was taking a placebo. And after 3 months of daily walking, they found that the group taking the L-carnitine experienced, first of all, less fatigue, improvements in cognitive function, as well as increases in muscle mass and decreases in fat mass. So it shows that you can literally improve and make improvements in body composition, as well as in fatigue, energy levels, cognitive function at any age. But sometimes we need some nutrient helpers to do this. We can't get enough or as much optimal amounts of what we need when we're 100 years old, just from diet alone, as remarkable as it is. So this is pretty interesting. The acetyl form of L-carnitine has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. So it will cross the blood-brain barrier and help this fat-burning process in brain cells. And so this is where people really experience, well, actually there's been studies done on memory, for example, with acetyl-L-carnitine, as well as improvements in mental energy. So that's what acetyl-L-carnitine does, helps the mitochondria burn fatty acids for fuel. Coenzyme Q10, I think everybody's heard about that. I won't say too much about it, but it is certainly, sometimes it's referred to as the cellular spark plug. It works in the mitochondria. It helps to pass electrons around to generate energy, but it's also a powerful antioxidant, so it helps protect against free radicals. Elevate-TP, this combination of apple and peat extracts that has been shown even single doses to improve ATP output, as well as glutathione. I'm going to talk about that shortly, and superoxide dismutase, another fantastic antioxidant. Glutathione, I mentioned before, this is a major antioxidant. It is made in the body from 3 amino acids called a tripeptide. It is important for both men and women, but particularly in men. Excuse me, we know that glutathione levels tend to be lower in men than women. Estrogen is protective of glutathione, but even after menopause, women tend to have higher glutathione levels than men. And so this is a factor that can really impact men's health. And it may be one of the contributing factors to why men tend to be more susceptible to heart disease, for example, and other types of chronic conditions. So glutathione levels tend to decline more rapidly in age, with age in males than females. It declines with both males and females, but it declines more in males and men. And so this is something to think of, especially if you're in an occupation or have any hobbies that have a high toxic load. So think about mechanics, mining, painting, working around any kinds of chemicals, even farming, working with pesticides, any kind of toxic load exposure where you're exposed to toxins and chemicals in the workplace, for example, or with hobbies. For women, a big area with this tends to be, working in, say, nail salons where there's a lot of chemicals in the air, but even things like hobbies like stained glass, for example, that can be associated with a higher toxic load. So glutathione helps detoxify, but specifically it will be used up more. The more we're exposed to toxins, the more we are exposed to free radicals. And so the body will use up more glutathione in that case. And so getting in more glutathione is really helpful. And any antioxidant we take in will help spare the body's use of glutathione. So this is where, as I said before, when it comes to antioxidants, the more the merrier, because they all do help each other out. So that's just a look at some nutrient solutions in terms of targeted mitochondrial nutrition. This combination of CoQ10, acetyl-L-carnitine, L-glutathione, superoxide dismutase to help increase energy production, support antioxidant defense, help with cardiovascular, cognitive, and brain health, as well as help improve strength and power in repetitive bouts of brief, high-intensity physical activity. Also may increase muscle mass when used in conjunction with resistance training. Okay, let's move on to a topic that is really fascinating. And again, this is where we get into some cutting edge healthy aging science. I really don't like the term anti-aging because it's quite negative. I'm not against aging in any way, but we want to do it as well as possible. And what is aging? Well, aging, the definition, best definition that we have now, a working definition of aging, is a time-dependent accumulation of cellular damage. And all of this accumulation eventually contributes to and furthers the aging process. So when you understand aging like that, you can think of, well, how do we minimize the damage that's being done? And how do we maximize the repair, or how we can optimize our body's ability to repair damage as it's happening? Because damage is always happening. We're producing free radicals. We're exposed to free radicals. Cells are being turned over. But when we're younger, we tend to be able to be more efficient at repairing our cells. And that process can become impaired with aging, and I'll explain why. So NAD support. What is NAD? NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So it's a technical name for this very technical looking molecule on the right. Don't want anybody's eyes glazing over here, and there will not be a test on this. But it's important to understand this is a molecule. Nicotinamide, in fact, is in the vitamin B3 family, but this is not a form of vitamin B3 that we can get through diet. It doesn't exist in foods. It's something that we make in the body under certain circumstances that I'll tell you what those are shortly. So NAD is used in the body as part of energy production. It's an energy precursor. That's important. But what's even more important, because we just talked about a bunch of nutrients that help with energy production, but this NAD does something that those nutrients we mentioned so far don't do. NAD is absolutely vital to the function of many biological processes that are related to aging, such as cell survival, age-related cell maintenance, and DNA repair. So the point is that if our NAD levels decline, we can't repair our cells and our DNA as well as we once did. And in fact, it's been shown that NAD levels do decline with age. By middle age, our NAD levels have plummeted to half of that of our youth. And this appears to drive the aging process because the cellular damage continues to happen, but we can no longer repair it as effectively as we once were able to because we need more NAD to do that. So this is really interesting for anybody who's been following the work, for example, of Dr. David Sinclair out of Harvard. You have probably already heard this information about NAD. So once this was recognized, then of course the next question became, what can we do to elevate our NAD levels? And Sinclair certainly does have a lot of interesting YouTube talks, even books out about things we can do to elevate our NAD levels. And of course, this is backed by a lot of research, both in animal and human studies, in terms of the effects of different ways of elevating NAD levels. So how do we do this? Okay. How can you make more NAD to help your body repair its cells better or repair its cells more like it once could? 3 ways. First of all, exercise. Both cardiovascular exercise as well as strength training, muscle building exercise. That will stimulate the body to produce NAD. So exercise really has this anti-aging or healthy aging effect. Next is diet. There's lots of things we can say about diet. Certainly you want to be following an anti-inflammatory diet. So out with the inflammatory omega-6, processed vegetable oils that cause inflammation in the body. Instead, in with healthy anti-inflammatory fats like omega-3s. I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. Not so much refined carbohydrate because that basically causes, the body has to process those and gives the mitochondria a lot of work to do without giving them a lot of nutrients to do the work. That can be exhausting. But even, very interestingly, and Sinclair talks a lot about this, intermittent fasting and caloric restriction. Nobody's excited to hear about caloric restriction, but honestly, that and intermittent fasting, when you look at certainly the animal studies, they can't be as extreme with people, but this is one of the benefits that we see from these kinds of practices we know have gained in popularity, and it turns out they will elevate NAD levels. So this is part of the healthy aging effect of those practices. And then the third are NAD boosters or NAD precursors. So there are certain molecules, a couple of synthetic or prescription medications, and a couple of natural or nutrients, basically, that have been shown to increase NAD levels. So the body will take these and use them to produce NAD. So that's what we're going to focus on. One in particular that's brand new to the market in Canada. And that is nicotinamide mononucleotide. So what is nicotinamide mononucleotide? Have you heard of this before? There's a poll running. Please feel free to weigh in if yes, you've heard of it. No, you haven't, or maybe you're taking it. So yes, I've heard of it. Yes, I'm taking it. Or no, this is new to me. Nicotinamide mononucleotide, as the name implies, the nicotinamide means this is a form of vitamin B3. Now, this particular one is one that we can get in small amounts in certain foods. Broccoli, cucumbers, edamame, and some green foods will contain this form of vitamin B3. Now, you've probably heard of vitamin B3, also goes by the name of niacin. This is a slightly different form of vitamin B3 than niacin. It does different things. It has different actions in the body. It doesn't cause flushing the way you may have heard with niacin, and it simply has different roles and actions. Specifically, NMN seems to play a key role in helping to support cellular energy metabolism. And it does this because it's converted in the body to NAD. So this is what's called an NAD precursor or an NAD booster, for example. This is another word that's used for that. So it looks like the majority of people on here tonight haven't heard of this. This is new information. So that means you haven't necessarily been, say, following Sinclair or the other, anti-aging biohackers, which is completely fine. This is why we're talking about this. NMN was just introduced to the market in Canada in December of 2022. This is brand new, and it's quite exciting because people, it's been used in research settings for a long time, and people have been getting it, from various sources that have been difficult to get, and now we can get it easily as a supplement in Canada. So this is the Rejuvenate NMN Surge. These are 150 milligram capsules of NMN, vegetarian capsules, typically in the clinical trials, and I'll show those to you a little bit of what they are shortly. 2 capsules per day, the equivalent of 250 to 300 milligrams is a very typical dose being used in the clinical trials. And again, the point of taking NMN is that it helps to replenish age-related declines in NAD, so it allows the body to start with cellular maintenance, cellular housekeeping, cellular repair in the way it once did. So here's a look at human clinical trials. By the way, with the animal studies, so there's lots of really fascinating animal studies. And if you want to know more about this, there is a website called nmn.com. Pretty straightforward, nmn.com. Lots of interesting research around NMN, summarizing what's been done. Certainly in animal studies, like a mouse studies, it really looks like a real fountain of youth. Like, it's remarkable when they compare the age-matched, like middle-aged mice, one that's been supplemented with NMN and one that hasn't, and the remarkable differences. This is something that's visible. It's even been shown to expand and extend lifespan in these animal models. Of course, we can't do those kinds of tests in humans, but there has been clinical work in humans. So, for example, a clinical trial, and remember, these slides will all be available to download, so don't worry about furiously taking down notes, and there will be references for all the studies. Postmenopausal women, 55 years and older, taking 300 milligrams, so that would be the equivalent of 2 capsules per day for 8 weeks. And at the end of the trial, there were improvements in a number of markers of blood sugar control, so that's very important. Improvements in HDL, which is good cholesterol, and improvements and elevations, a 19% increase in something called adiponectin. What the heck is that? Adiponectin is a hormone that is produced by, or should be produced by, our fat cells under certain circumstances. So basically, once we gain a certain amount of weight, our fat cells should produce adiponectin to tell the body, hey, guess what? We have enough stored energy. You don't need to gain any more weight. And so adiponectin plays a role in maintaining a healthy set point weight. Without that, if your adiponectin levels are low, your fat cells aren't producing it, then people tend to just continue to gain weight and have a hard time maintaining a healthy weight. So really interesting increase in adiponectin with NMN, as well as increase in DHEA. This is sometimes referred to as an anti-aging hormone that's produced by the adrenal glands. Other studies, one in recreational runners. These are people aged 27 to 50, showing improvements in aerobic capacity. Others in pre-diabetic women, looking at improvements in insulin responses. And one interesting study in older adults averaging 72 years of age, when they took their NMN in the evening between 6 p.m. and bedtime, it improved sleep duration and decreased sleep disturbances and improved daytime functioning because people were better rested. So I think that when you can get NAD levels up in the brain, again, cellular repair in the brain can help lead to healthy sleep. So this is just a look, and again, you can check out at nmn.com some of the other research that's being done. This is really fascinating information. Okay, so let me just go back here and I'll take this a quick look at the NMN. Let's just see here. Okay. Oh, question here. Really interested in getting a link. Yes, so there will be links to. You can have links to well, nmn.com. You can see all that research, or when you download the handout tonight, you can see the references for the studies that I'm mentioning here. Okay, so we're on step 3. So we started with step 1 was targeted mitochondrial nutrition. Step 2 was increasing NAD levels so our cells can repair themselves the way they once did. Step 3 would be modulating inflammation. So this, inflammation is, of course, is a driving factor in pain and painful conditions, but it also is something that promotes aging because it can be, when inflammation is happening too much, it can be harmful. So a big factor in balancing inflammation, as I mentioned earlier, is the types of fats that we have in our diet. So omega-3s are a foundation of inflammatory balance and making sure we have a healthy foundation. As I mentioned, it's worthwhile doing a bit of an oil change. So checking your diet for where you may have highly processed vegetable or seed oils. These tend to be high in omega-6 fats, and especially when those are cooked at high temperatures, those can really be inflammatory. So things like canola, sunflower, safflower, all of those types of oils are typically high in omega-6. But instead, things like avocado, fish, of course, as well as, we're looking at plant-based sources, things like flax and hemp and chia. These are sources of fats that can be converted to omega-3s. So really getting omega-3s really helps to balance and manage inflammation. So I mentioned here already, we looked at the mitochondrial energy formula as well as the NMN. There is this longevity wellness optimization kit, which is a 30-day supply of packets that include 2 of the NMN Surge, 4 of the Rejuvenate mitochondrial energy formula, 1 omega-3 ultra strength with vitamin D, and 1 quercetin lipomycel, which is an additional source of antioxidants, as well as a blood vessel protectant. So this is a kit that people can take if they're interested in taking both, energy formula as well as NMN Surge, along with an EFA that is more cost effective and more convenient than buying various bottles and keeping track of how many of which capsules you're taking. So just to keep in mind that this all comes together as a kit. Okay, so when we have one last bonus question, or sorry, bonus tip here, and we'll have to see who this applies to. So we're running a sleep poll to find if you have trouble sleeping. You'll have to bear with me for a second because my voice is getting very, very dry. So I keep muting myself to clear my throat since I drank all my water. So poll question running. Do you have trouble sleeping? Yes, often. Yes, occasionally. Or no, I sleep well. I'm very curious to see how this plays out. But we certainly know that sleep is very important for many aspects of health, absolutely essential for mitochondrial support. And we'll talk a little bit about sleep anatomy, if you will. Feel free to continue to weigh in on the poll. It looks like more people are reporting that they're not sleeping well or they have trouble sleeping well often, some occasionally, and there's few people that are sleeping well. So I would say the majority of people either often or occasionally need some sleep help, as I suspected. So there's really lots of benefits, of course, of sleep. I don't think we need to talk about the fact that it recharges the body and mind, improving productivity, concentration. We just feel better when we're sleeping better. But there is a newly recognized benefit of sleep that has been recognized just in the last few years, that during deep sleep, which happens, and I'll talk a little, do I have a slide about this? No, I don't. Okay, so let me back up. So we have different types of sleep, deep and light sleep. Deep sleep, it tends to happen more in the beginning of the night. Your first 2 to 3 sleep cycles, you're spending more time in this deep, non-dreaming sleep. As the night wears on, say, 3, 4, 5 a.m., you're spending more time in light dreaming or REM sleep. And we've really only very recently recognized that during deep sleep at the beginning of the night, there is a circulatory system in the brain that activates, cerebrospinal fluid circulatory system that activates in the brain that flushes the brain out. You essentially clean your brain in deep sleep. It only happens during this time. And so if you're not getting adequate amount of deep sleep, you are not cleaning your brain. So that is pretty cool information, the fact that we're still learning these kinds of things about the brain, about the body, and about sleep. So keep that in mind. I don't know if you've ever heard the old adage, how does it go? An hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 after. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not, but maybe this is where that came. That's a very, very old saying, but maybe this is why. The more sleep you get early in the night, before midnight up to, I would say 1 or 2 a.m., we're doing more of this deep brain cleansing sleep. So if you're not sleeping well, if you have sleep disturbances, stress, high blood pressure, or high levels of alcohol, it's been shown you this system doesn't really activate efficiently, and you don't clean your brain while you're sleeping. So. And then what about REM sleep? So later on the night, we start dreaming, and that's important too. We need dream sleep. And this is something during which we consolidate memories, we remember things, we forget things, we process emotions. We need dreams to process our thoughts, emotions, and it's also part of mental health and overall health. So we do need, it's like the yin and the yang. We need both deep and light sleep. So it sounds like not everybody is sleeping well. What can we do to sleep better? Well, there are a number of things. Melatonin is something that helps sleep for some people. Now, I'm going to talk about this because melatonin also supports mitochondrial function. So this is why this is the bonus step. We think that we're sleeping well just to sleep well, but no. We're going to get a good night's sleep to help our mitochondria do their job better. Melatonin also happens to be a fantastic antioxidant. Now, melatonin is not the sleep solution. Do I have a slide here about it? No, I don't. Melatonin is not the sleep solution for everybody necessarily. We know that melatonin is a sleep hormone made by the pineal gland. And in the brain in response to darkness. And so it doesn't actually kick in so much to put you to sleep. Rather, it helps to keep you to sleep. And even more so when your eyes have been closed for a few hours, that's when the melatonin really kicks in. It peaks about 3 or 4 in the morning. And then it starts to drop off. So melatonin actually also helps with that dream sleep that you need to have. In terms of supplemental melatonin, not everybody does well with this. It's worth trying because it can be amazing if it works for you. Some people, they find when they take melatonin, they either have too many dreams or they feel groggy or hungover, possibly headaches the next day. If that is you, and if you've tried melatonin even in small amounts, you get that effect. Unfortunately, it's not a good option for you, but you can try other non-melatonin sleep supports. But for the people for whom it works, ideally when you're taking melatonin, you should wake up feeling refreshed, and you should notice the difference all the next day, that you just feel better rested. That's how that works. How much melatonin really depends on the individual. It can vary between 1 milligram and 10 milligrams. If you're closer to the 1 milligram end, as I am, then taking 10 you would not feel well the next day. However, it's worth trying starting at a small dose or doing something that is flexible dosing. For example, something that you can either cut in half, or even a powdered formula, for example, can work well with melatonin. But on its own, it comes in, 1, 3, 5, 6, 10. 3 is a very common, 3 to 6 is a very common dose, but starting small and working your way up is a great way to start. And again, you should fall asleep, feel like you sleep well, wake up feeling rested, and notice that difference and have a sense of well-being with the melatonin. So yes, melatonin, fantastic antioxidant. It is working in your mitochondria, in your brain, scavenging free radicals. There is a brand new, as part of this line, I would say a high dose sleep support formula called Sleep Better. This is made with an interesting technology. It's a tri-layer tablet. Now, altogether, the formula includes 10 milligrams of melatonin. You can snap that in half to get a total of 5 milligrams. Either way, half is released immediately to help people fall asleep and get to sleep, and then half is released later on in the night, because we know that's when melatonin is really important. You also have a combination of ingredients including 5-HTP, L-theanine, and sleep botanicals to help people feel relaxed and sleep better. Other tips to improve your melatonin levels that you may have heard, but it bears repeating, is to sleep in a completely dark room. If you can't manage that, then try to sleep with a sleep mask. Get used to sleeping with a sleep mask, because it's the darkness that will trigger melatonin production, and even a small amount of light in a room can inhibit your melatonin production throughout the night. Keeping a regular schedule as well, going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, sounds boring, but the body loves it. It helps to set your circadian rhythm. And being exposed to light as early as you can when you wake up. So whatever time you wake up in the morning, turn the lights on, look out the window. If the sun is up at this time of year, it often isn't, but the point is, get the lights going as soon as you can in the morning. This also helps to set your circadian rhythm. Okay, so that wraps up, and it brings us to 45 minutes, which is exactly what I had planned for information and questions. But just to summarize, we want to have, exercise. You can experiment with intermittent fasting and or caloric restriction. You can be doing targeted mitochondrial nutrition with things like acetyl L-carnitine, CoQ10, L-glutathione, looking at NAD support with now NMN that's available in Canada, which is fantastic, as well as taming inflammation by doing an oil change in your diet, getting out the omega-6s, putting in the omega-3s, and then doing whatever you can to get a better night's sleep. By the way, the products that I mentioned here are all certified clean above and beyond the strict Canadian guidelines by ISURA, testing for up to 800 different possible contaminants using state-of-the-art testing to make sure you're getting exactly what it says on the label, and nothing else that you don't have to wonder what else might be in there. And you can find out more about this, and if you're really interested in CSI kind of testing, at isura.ca.